All right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis, coming to you live, well, pre-recorded from the closet of shame. I have not showered. I have not even brushed my teeth. I just rolled out of bed, had myself a cup of coffee and a bowl of cereal, grabbed myself another cup of coffee because I'm just, cruising toward an ass disaster. And, we're going to be here talking about some football, both college and the NFL, because obviously last time we talked, Nick Saban had just retired. Now we've got a replacement at Alabama, got a replacement of the person that went to Alabama at his former school, and then they found a replacement, and we have a replacement at the school that replaced the guy that went to Alabama. I hope that made as little sense as possible. It's a wild time right now, and that's not all we're talking about either. I mean, obviously, we got playoffs to get to, massive amount of stuff to get to, quite frankly. And oh, by the way, don't mean to pat myself on the back, but, real quick, you done good, kid. You done good, kid. 4-0 in the picks this week. If you were riding with me, you are significantly wealthier as we talk here on this Tuesday. We'll call it afternoon by the time I'm done recording and getting this thing up. So that is not to say that I'm going to have really maybe any picks for this week. That might have been the last slate of picks I have until the end of the season. We'll see. We'll see. We got what? 3 more rounds, including the divisional round, to get some picks out there. Just a quick look at the lines right now. I ain't got no leans one way or the other, so we'll see. We'll see. That's more of a Thursday problem than right now, but I need to stop talking. Got to get into this. Otherwise, this will be a 2-hour long episode because, boy, there's a lot of stuff going on. We'll start with the headlines, then we'll get into the football, and then I'll get you out of here. Probably in roughly, I don't know, 4 hours or so. We'll see how it works out here. Get a quick gulp of this coffee. I feel like I have more coffee in this mug than usual when I start recording these things, but I don't know. Yep, that's the good stuff. And itchy eye. And we'll move on from here. Oh yeah, last time we talked, Bill Belichick had not officially parted ways. He has now, and he has for quite a few days now. I think that was on Thursday of last week. Basically, like right after I posted the previous episode. They just came out and said, yeah, Bill Belichick's not coming back. Kind of what we all saw coming. Officially parted ways with the Patriots. The team moved quickly to promote Jerod Mayo as their next head coach. Usually you'd have to go through a whole interview process, at least make it look like you're not already zeroed in on one candidate, just product of the Rooney Rule and all that sort of, hiring practices, mumbo jumbo that, they sneak in there to make you at least pretend like you don't already have a guy in mind to hire whenever you start looking for a new guy to hire. It's different this time because it was kind of contractually already put into Jerod Mayo's contract whenever he signed an extension. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. There was, I believe, like some sort of escalator clause or, codified succession plan, if you will, to where if Bill Belichick steps down or retires, Jerod Mayo can be hired right away with no real interview process. And that's exactly what happened. So Jerod Mayo is the new head coach. Bill Belichick is out. And now the head coaching market, as far as guys to hire, I mean, there is a glut of talent right now. This is the most just bona fide, very good candidates that we've had in quite some time. Bill Belichick's in there now. Mike Vrabel was already in there. Pete Carroll was already out there. Not to mention the young guys that are coming up. Like Ben Johnson is going to be a slam dunk hire for somebody just based on the way he can coordinate an offense. Bobby Slowick is putting his name out there. Still think he might be another year away from actually getting that big job. I think he's got to do it one more year. Well, honestly, though, he's been so good with C.J. Stroud this year, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he just takes a job right out of the gate. That being said, if the Panthers are the only one that ultimately would decide to go with him, that could be problematic. That could be a reason where you come back. That's basically why Ben Johnson came back, because I think it was just the Panthers and not really a whole lot of opportunities outside of that last offseason. So he goes back to the Lions, and now he basically has his pick of the litter because, I mean, You love a lot of these candidates. I feel like Mike Vrabel, probably the top of the market right now. I think if you're in the market to hire a head coach, especially if you're a team like the Seahawks, which is the name that has been getting out there in relation to Mike Vrabel, where, the offense is doing well. You got Shane Waldron there, who I'm fairly certain Shane Waldron's going to stay going into the next regime just because he's done such a great job. And lest we not forget, he was like a head coaching candidate just last offseason with what he did with Geno Smith in that offense. I think he's really, really good at what he does. So Shane Waldron probably sticks around. You bring in a guy like Mike Vrabel, who has been able to build houses out of chewed up chewing gum and nails for his entire time in Tennessee, and especially in relation to that defense. That's been the problem for the Seahawks for years to come now, for years past now. So that would be a hire that makes a whole lot of sense. Outside of that, though, I mean, Ben Johnson's right up there. Bill Belichick's right up there. I mean, we got so much talent, and I'm sure I'm forgetting names. That's just how many guys are out there at this current moment. But yeah, Bill Belichick, no longer the Patriots head coach. Within 24 hours, we had Saban and Belichick retire. Wild. Absolutely, abjectly wild stuff. And my childhood is officially over. I didn't remember a football reality because I didn't really start watching football until I want to say 07, 08. And even then, I started watching NFL before I started watching college football. At least, paying attention, very much in-depth paying attention. So I don't really remember a reality where Nick Saban wasn't the coach of Alabama and Bill Belichick. Well, Bill Belichick's been the head coach and GM of the Patriots for almost literally my entire life. I think he was there for 24 years or something like that. And I'm 27 years old, so yeah, literally can't remember a time that Bill Belichick wasn't the head coach of the New England Patriots. And my childhood is completely over. It's wild. It's a wild time to be alive. I think, Saban's just going to ride off into the sunset. In fact, he's probably going to be the shadow head of football operations. Seems like what he's stepping into with Alabama. He's still going to be in and around the facility. He's still going to be, probably helping out with recruiting pitches and whatnot. He'll just be lurking in the background. Bill Belichick's going to be just straight up coaching, I think. Unless someone doesn't hire him, I think he's going to be coaching. And we got some possible places that aren't even open yet. Rosters that still have a head coach as of right now that may become available, so to speak, here in the coming days. We'll just have to wait. That's probably going to be something that we address on Thursday. But right now, Jerod Mayo is the new head coach of the New England Patriots. Bill Belichick is now a free agent. And everyone who's my age, their childhood just ended as of last week. So we'll keep it moving from there. Alabama talked about Saban retiring, obviously. Wasn't going to be Dan Lanning as far as the coaching search was concerned. I don't know if they probably reached out to him, had a little bit of a filling out process. Dan Lanning signs a giant extension with Oregon, puts out a baller video where the final line is, if you're afraid of your coach leaving, come here instead, basically. Baller video. Dan Lanning is a master recruiter, and I think I've talked about this before, I think he's just knocking on the door where I'll use the throwing analogy, right? Again, so if you don't know, I used to have a private coach when it comes to throwing shot put, discus, all that sort of stuff. I was really only good at shot put. Let's be honest here. I was pretty mid at all the other stuff, but I was good enough at shot put. Whenever he said, whenever you got multiple throws, like 4 or 5 throws in a row going the same distance every single time, you're just hammering like between a couple inches of each other. That's when you know a thrower is ready to break through to that next level. Say you're hitting 45 over and over again. You're getting close to just breaking one through, hitting 46, 47, something like that. Maybe that's a little bit of a giant jump there, but you know what I mean. You're ready to break through the next level. That's what I feel like Oregon has been doing here for the last, 2 years under Dan Lanning for sure. Then you bring in Dylan Gabriel, you bring in Dante Moore to secure the future after Dylan Gabriel leaves. You bring in Evan Stewart in the portal, which, by the way, hey, Evan Stewart's going to Oregon. Don't know how that one slipped past me. Maybe it didn't, and I just, uttered it in passing at some point in a previous podcast here. But yeah, Oregon is doing some really, really big things. They're entering the Big Ten. I think they're on the cusp of being a national title contender every single year. And especially with this new playoff format, they should be in the playoffs every single year, assuming that Dan Lanning continues to recruit at the level he's recruiting. And now he's got less competition now that Saban is out at Alabama. So, yeah, that wasn't going to be Dan Lanning. Ultimately, and it's an interesting one. Kalen DeBoer is going to be the new head coach at Alabama. And it's questionable, and the hire isn't questionable. I think it's a slam dunk hire. I think if you're looking for a guy that can get the most out of a roster that is put together, more times than you can count, he has won games with an inferior roster on the field. Hell, he did it. I think he did it twice this year against Oregon. No disrespect to Washington here, but you look like talent for talent. Oregon was a more talented football team, and Kalen DeBoer and the Washington Huskies beat them twice this year. I mean, there's a reason that they were favored by 9.5, I believe, 10 points going into that Pac-12 title game was Oregon. Washington comes out, doesn't even matter. They come out there and get the win. If you're looking for a guy that can get the most out of a roster, I think Kalen DeBoer is your guy to do just that. He's a fantastic coach, and he's obviously well respected all around college football. It's interesting that the timing of all of this, Saban retiring after the national championship, obviously doesn't want to, ruffle any feathers like that. Doesn't want to take away the spotlight from the kids on the field. And I think that is a bit of a, it's definitely a major factor as to why Saban waited this long. Also, though, I think obviously Saban knew that he was going to retire going into the playoff. I think he informed the university that he was going to retire going into the playoff. And as a result of that, I think the university had a pretty good idea of who they were going to hire. And if it wasn't going to be Dan Lanning, if they even offered Dan Lanning. I have no idea if they even offered Dan Lanning. Feels like Kalen DeBoer was, if not number 1A, I would imagine. And I think the administration, knowing that they likely would be hiring Kalen DeBoer, didn't want to have, Saban, I knew that as well, didn't want to retire in the middle of the college football playoff, put his team in a bind where he's addressing the rumors of going to Alabama after the national championship instead of focusing on the football game. So you wait until after the football game, Saban retires, and now you can kind of go on your merry way over to Alabama. Maybe a little conspiratorial, maybe a little bit of tea leaf reading, but that's kind of my read in the situation, just kind of looking at it from afar. Either way, classy move. Kalen DeBoer is now at Alabama. There was an open candidacy at Washington, but let's talk about the staff at Alabama first and foremost. First, offensive coordinator from Washington, Ryan Grubb, who Saban actually pursued last offseason, and Ryan Grubb decided to stick around with Kalen DeBoer. This time follows DeBoer to Alabama as the offensive coordinator. Most of the staff from Washington is coming over on the offensive side of the ball. And then on the other side, DeBoer made a splash hire at defensive coordinator, getting South Alabama's head coach Kane Womack. Seems very solid at getting the most out of the roster. He has a lot of top 20, top 30 defenses in his time over there with South Alabama. Interested to see what Womack does with premium talent to work with. He's never had that. He went from the Indiana defensive coordinator to the head coach at South Alabama and has done fairly well with what he's been given. He's going to get a different caliber of athlete coming to Alabama this upcoming year. Very, very good at recruiting the state. I think both from an X's and O's standpoint, a respectability standpoint as a head coach, obviously a very, very good head coach. And this defensive coordinator job at Alabama is his way of getting one step closer to getting a big-time Power 2, Power 3 coaching job. No longer a Power 5. We all know what it is right now. It is both a stepping stone for him. It's good from X's and O's standpoint. And from a recruiting standpoint, it's a slam dunk hire. He knows the state of Alabama. He can relate to kids. The main thing coming over, same thing with Brian Kelly going down to LSU. The main thing with Kalen DeBoer coming from the top left part of the United States down to the bottom right part of the United States is he has no guys on his staff. And maybe I'm not giving them enough credit, but you're up in the Seattle area. you're not really having a whole lot of guys on your staff that are specialized in recruiting the Southeast. Kane Womack can do just that for you, and that's a big guy to have on your staff. If Kalen DeBoer surrounds himself with the right recruiting staff, makes the right hires on both offensive and defensive side of the ball, and it seems like Ryan Grubb, there's a reason Saban wanted him, and that was Saban's number one guy last offseason, because Ryan Grubb is a damn good offensive coordinator, and you saw the creativity really all throughout this past season with Washington. Obviously, having Michael Penix throwing to Rome Odunze and the Jalen's Polk and McMillan, that'll obviously help you out. Also, Dylan Johnson in the backfield. Not every day that your starting running back tears his ACL preseason and the backup guy that you just kind of picked up in the portal like yada, 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 comes in and has a million yards and a bunch of touchdowns throughout the course of the year. So Ryan Grubb, obviously, given a lot of stuff to work with last season, it's not going to be any different this upcoming season with the Washington Huskies and going forward. Well, not the Washington, with the Alabama Crimson Tide and going forward. I think Kalen DeBoer's made some really, really good hires here with the initial Alabama coaching staff, so to speak. Will he ever recruit to the level that Saban did? Unlikely. I mean, is it out of the question to say that there'll be a top 10 recruiting class every year? Absolutely not. And it's Alabama. They absolutely should be with what they have in the building. Will they be perennial top 5 every single year? I don't know. I don't think so. Really, only Georgia at this point, I would say, has what word would I even use? I feel like Georgia is the only one with the capability of being number one every single year at this point. Unless Kalen DeBoer has something that I'm not aware of here, it feels like this is going to be Kirby Smart and Georgia's time to shine. I talked about it last week. I think we are firmly entering the prime of the Kirby Smart era in college football, and I think it starts this upcoming year with a national championship and goes forward from there. This will be Carson Beck's last year in college. Everyone wants to do well. If Carson Beck has a good season, is a Heisman finalist even, he is likely the number one overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. That's not me talking. That's all the draft experts and whatnot. So yeah, I think Georgia probably gets it done this upcoming season. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. I think these are all very good hires by Alabama. Just kind of incumbent on the Alabama fan base to be rational, which is not their strong suit. So we'll see what happens here. I think it's a really good hire, all things considered. You're never going to get a replacement for Nick Saban, really. It's an impossibly high bar, but getting a guy like Kalen DeBoer who can consistently get the best out of his team, works his ass off, made a bunch of good hires when he got to Alabama, still has Saban lurking around the building to make sure it doesn't go too far off of the rails. I think it's going to end up being good. I think you're probably going to be national title contenders most years. You just may not be 12-1 every single season, which very few teams can really say that. So be happy with what you got. I have no faith in that actually being the case, though. Obviously, Kalen DeBoer leaves Washington. That leaves a big-time Big Ten, weird to say that, weird-time Big Ten coaching opportunity open for business. The list came down to, it seemed like Lance Leipold or Jedd Fisch. Lance Leipold was rumored to be the leader in the clubhouse. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if the numbers didn't line up, if Lance Leipold just outright refused, wanted to stay at Kansas for at least another year. Whatever may happen, Jedd Fisch was the one that ultimately came out of here with the Washington head coaching job. And boy, this is another slam dunk hire for Washington, quite frankly. Very acrimonious sort of leaving Arizona for Jedd Fisch. There's a lot of hard feelings there, and I can't blame the kids because it's a tough business. I think it's the same thing with Kalen DeBoer. You've been telling your players to buy in, stick around. We're going to be building something special here. And then Washington comes calling there, and then you hit the hills like, okay, $7.5 million a year. I am out of here and I'm going up to Seattle, folks. See you later. Most of you I won't because, y'all can enter the transfer portal for the next month. Not taking all of you. So tough thing there. I understand hard feelings from the players for sure. And there was ample hard feelings. Make no mistake about it. There's some really good players on that roster though. First and foremost though, a lot of players you haven't heard of. One guy that I have talked about a fairly good amount on this podcast, though, true freshman quarterback who really lit up defenses down the stretch for Arizona, lit up Oklahoma in their bowl game this year. Noah Fafita, I have a pretty good inkling that Jedd Fisch is going to bring him with him to Washington. That's a really good piece. You got him for at least 2 more years before he's even allowed to go to the NFL draft, and we'll see what his draft stock is by then. Maybe even stays another year, but that's as big as the hiring is of Jedd Fisch, which, I mean, taking a dumpster fire of a program in Arizona when he got there. He won 2 games his first year, then 5-7, now 10 wins in his 3rd season. What he's done at Arizona is nothing short of remarkable. Make no mistake about it. And that's the type of guy that you'd like to have at Washington any day of the year. Bringing Noah Fafita with him is just as consequential as hiring Jedd Fisch in the first place. So that's a really good pickup there. And I think having Noah Fafita in the fold was not totally off the radar as far as calculations coming into this thing for Washington. So a good hire there. And obviously now Arizona has a head coaching opportunity. This is kind of what happens when a Keystone program like Alabama comes open. A program that is a rung below loses a head coach, and then a program that's a rung below that loses a head coach as well. And now everyone's looking to hire someone new. So Jedd Fisch goes to Washington, and now one of the more fun names in all of in all of college football head coaching ranks, San Jose State head coach Brent Brennan is going to be the new head coach of Arizona. He was, I'll get to that in just a second. He was obviously head coach at San Jose State. He was a finalist for the Arizona job last time around whenever they ended up hiring Jedd Fisch. This time around, gets the job. Pretty solid head coach. Not a very good overall record. They play a lot of Power 5 teams at San Jose State, which does not help. Specifically the Pac-12 over the last couple of years. They've been playing the likes of like USC, Oregon State, and all that jazz to start off the year, and it has not been great, but 2 of the last 3 seasons, they have won the Mountain West title. And this last year, they were hot as hell down the stretch. They started bad to start the year. But San Jose State, I mean, they won their last 6 games by just a shade under 21 points a game going out of the regular season. They lost the bowl game, but transfer portal, all that sort of stuff, you can kind of just throw that to the side. They played very, very well down the stretch. I admittedly don't know a whole lot about Brent Brennan other than his name is fun. BB initials, Brent Brennan, sounds like a used car salesman, sounds like a guy that would own a Volkswagen dealership somewhere in my town. He's good for my program any day of the week. So we'll see what happens there. I like the hire from a name standpoint, and obviously the way San Jose State performed down the stretch, winning 2 of the last 3 Mountain West titles. There's some stuff to work with there. So I like the idea. I like where we're going with this. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens there at Arizona. They have some significant budgetary problems, so to speak, that they need to take care of. So we'll see what happens there. We'll definitely see what happens there. Let's see what happens here. Up next, already talked about that. Solid hire given the quick turnaround, by the way. I think that's good to say with Arizona. And hopefully they can hold together their recruiting class over there, because this is the type of thing you lose your star head coach, everything could come falling apart. Which, by the way, if you're losing Noah Fafita and basically, probably every pro left on the roster, probably going to be a bit of a fixer-upper in year 1 anyways, especially with the late turnaround here. But it's a tough game, man. Jesus, I just had some gas come up. Yep. It's a tough game nowadays, unfortunately. Penix and McCarthy, they are officially in the draft. Quinn Ewers does the expected and is staying in college another year, which, I've said it before, folks, watch spring ball, because I don't think it's guaranteed that Quinn Ewers starts next year. It is worth mentioning, there is a transfer portal window after spring ball. I'm just telling y'all, watch Texas spring ball. If Arch Manning comes into his 2nd year at Texas and starts lighting up the defense, Would I be shocked if Arch Manning was just named the starter outright in spring ball? No, I would not. And if that happens, Quinn Ewers is not, he did not come back to college for another year to sit on the bench. I'll tell you that right now. And he already transferred away from Ohio State once. So I could see him doing that all over again. And that would be the biggest free agent quarterback on the market if that were to happen. I'm getting way ahead of myself, though. Just watch Texas spring ball. That'll be the biggest storyline of spring ball whenever it starts here. What is that, April? I think spring ball usually comes around. That's the one to watch. That's the one to watch right now. Outside of your own team, and maybe, take a look at Alabama or something. Texas with Ewers and Arch Manning. That's going to be a good one. That's going to be an intriguing storyline to say the least. Maybe if Ewers beats out Arch Manning doesn't come back to Texas for another year. I don't see that happening. I think there's a reason why he chose Texas and Steve Sarkisian over any of the other options that he had coming out of high school. I mean, he was the number one overall recruit, I think, for a reason. That being said, would I be surprised? And this is the modern era of college football. I would not at all be surprised if Arch Manning decided to go in the portal if Quinn Ewers is the starter for another season. So, again, just keep an eye on that. Also, Caleb Williams declared for the draft. I didn't even know he hadn't declared for the NFL draft yet, but duh. You're the number one overall pick, you're going to the NFL draft. It's not a tough calculation here. It's not like we had a whole lot to worry about. It's like, okay, am I going to be getting a shade under $35 million guaranteed for the first 4 years of my career? Yeah, sure. I'll go take that instead of taking whatever NIL money I'm getting here in college. I think that's a pretty easy calculation to make when it comes to whether or not to go into the NFL. If you're a top 5 pick, I mean, barring something completely unforeseen, you are going into the NFL. It's pretty much invariably how it is at this point. Do you really want to risk? I mean, the Bears are one thing. They have their history with quarterbacks. Do you really want to risk going into next year, maybe having to be picked by the Panthers? Because he will be the number one overall pick next year if he were to stay in college. So do you really want to risk that? Do you really want to roll the dice? Because you're still going to be a top 5 pick. Might as well just go this year. So yeah, Caleb Williams in the draft, and that caps out the loaded quarterback class that we got coming into the NFL this year. It is absolutely chock full of guys that I could see starting one day. That first round, that top 10 is going to be very, very interesting. There are a couple teams at the top, specifically the Chargers and the Cardinals, that do not need a quarterback, that could trade out of their picks for a haul of assets in return. This could be a very, very interesting lead up to the draft, so watch all that. I once again maintain that if Penix and McCarthy are on the board at the same time and the Vikings pick McCarthy, put me on suicide watch, folks, because I will be hating my life. All right, so Emeka Egbuka will stay for his senior year at Ohio State. That's big for them. Julian Fleming ended up going to Penn State. I think I already said that, but yeah, worth noting. Cam Ward, former Washington State quarterback who had declared for the NFL draft, said psych and is now committed to Miami. Was initially the front runner for him whenever he committed to the NFL draft. Feels like an NIL sort of thing. Miami forked over a little bit more cash. Cam Ward said, yeah, I can work with that. We're going to Miami. And I don't think this is, I don't think it's a exaggeration to say that this puts Miami firmly in the territory of competing for 10 wins in the playoff spot this year. They are that good. Mario Cristobal has been recruiting his ass off for the last 2 years. A lot of 5-star guys that they brought in last year and the year before are reaching that age where they are ready to start and make gigantic contributions on the field. All they really needed was a quarterback. Tyler Van Dyke was not good enough this past couple of years. You bring in Cam Ward, a legitimate bona fide pro prospect, and I think that's going to be paying massive dividends for them this season. Brings them a element that they did not have the last couple years, which is really competent quarterback play. Don't know who he's throwing to, but this is a huge pickup for Miami. I think Mario Cristobal in year 3 is due for a big uptick in production. It was an up and down season last year. I think this coming year they're going to be really, really good, competing for an ACC title. 49ers didn't waste, sorry, the commies didn't waste a whole lot of time. They hired the 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters as their next GM. Next order of business is finding the new head coach with no shortage of options. Obviously, Bill Belichick just came on the market. That's a name you've heard floated out there before. Ben Johnson seems to be interested in that opportunity, which it's not a completely unattractive option. I mean, it's a bad football team, make no mistake about it. The defense is atrocious. The previous regime made some terrible picks on that side. Sorry, Emmanuel Forbes, it hasn't exactly worked out for you. Offensive line is a mess. You don't really have a quarterback in the building that you trust. It's a clean slate sort of thing, but that is also why it's kind of an attractive job for a young head coaching candidate like Ben Johnson. You have an opportunity to, from the ground up, with all the cap space in the world and a high draft pick, to build this program up in your image, so to speak. You're not going into an already finished product of a team like, say, the Philadelphia Eagles or the Dallas Cowboys or something like that. You're not going into someplace where, really, the LA Chargers, for that matter, with what kind of cap hell they're in. You're not going into a situation like that and saying, like, okay, I got to work with what I got. No, you can just build it up from the ground up. It's going to be a bad first year. Make no mistake about it. You're going to have a tough time winning football games in the first year with the commies. But 2-3 years down the road, if you make the right picks, especially starting with the pick of a quarterback this year, obviously, they're at the number 2 overall pick. So Drake May, Jaden Daniels, one of those two, I would imagine, is going to be the guy that you pick there. You can really build up a winner in the way you see fit. So I think it's an attractive job for those reasons specifically. Ben Johnson, I would see maybe taking that job. Bill Belichick obviously still out there. We'll have to wait and monitor that one. But no one's hired a head coach outside of the Patriots because the Patriots put together a succession plan for that already. So we'll see. We'll see how that all works out. Let's see. Ooh, gotta catch my breath, man. I'm just talking too much. Whew. All right, Washington running back Dillon Johnson, former Mississippi State running back, has declared for the NFL draft. Uncertainty at head coach probably helped make that decision here. He declared for the draft in the intermediate time between when Kalen DeBoer was hired by Alabama to when Jed Fish was hired by Washington. Either way, though, Dillon Johnson didn't get a whole lot of hits at Mississippi State, got a bunch of hits this last year and showed, I think, everything he needs to have a quality draft grade. What does that mean? We'll see. I think probably 4th, 5th round. Anywhere from the 4th to the 6th round, I could see Dillon Johnson going. I think he is a guy that will be drafted and will make some solid contributions at the next level, wherever he is ending up this coming season. So all the best for Dillon Johnson. I think this is probably the right thing for him to do. I mean, as soon as you can go to the NFL and get a solid draft grade, that's when you need to go if you're a running back right now, because they will run you into the ground. Make no mistake about it. Ravens designated tight end Mark Andrews to return from IR. Giants step to a possible return in the divisional round. I've heard nothing about that so far. I mean, we're just now into the week leading up to the divisional round, but if you got, with Isaiah Likely playing the way that he's playing, you get Mark Andrews back into the fold. I mean, this Ravens offense is going to be unstoppable. They were unstoppable with Mark Andrews in the fold before he got injured and rolled up on whenever he did. I can't remember which game it was. I was watching it live, though, and it wasn't pretty. Maybe that was the Rams game. Can't quite remember. But, yeah, having him back is going to be huge for the divisional round. And I think, obviously, the Ravens were a favorite to come out of the AFC coming into this thing. They're the number 1 overall seed for a reason. Home field advantage, a defense that has been porous at times this year in the Houston Texans coming up against them, especially in the middle of the field. We'll see how he does against those linebackers, but having Mark Andrews back, that's going to be huge. That's going to be huge and one to watch going forward. In the wake of Saban retiring, Isaiah Bond, a highly touted receiver when he came into Alabama. You may remember him catching the 4th and 31 touchdown versus Auburn. He is entering the transfer portal. He quickly committed to Texas. Bama also had the number 9 player in the 2024 class. Sorry about that. The number 9 player in the 2024 class also decommitted. So, this is what happens when you lose a head coach. The guy that recruited you is no longer there, no longer being the coach. Probably time for some of these guys to move on. That's kind of what happened with the wide receiver decommitting. What happened with Isaiah Bond, obviously. This is just what happens. And also, Texas getting another highly touted receiver. The rich just keep on getting richer. What more can I say on that front? My God, my nose is itching. Goodness gracious. That's just untenable situation there, my dude. All right, so you got that going on. I think Alabama might be an interesting year one. I think Jalen Milroe is still your quarterback there. Until further notice, that's what I'm assuming. I think you've seen enough potential from Jalen Milroe. Obviously, very good at throwing deep, very explosively athletic. Ryan Grubb can do some stuff with that. Make no mistake about it. It's just a matter of developing the intermediate accuracy a little bit more, which obviously Jalen Milroe struggled with. Recognition of the blitz and all that sort of stuff. Because Jesse Minter, ate his lunch in that playoff game in the Sugar Bowl. Was it the Sugar Bowl? No, it was the Rose Bowl. Excuse me. Either way, Jesse Minter ate Jalen Milroe's lunch with the complex blitz packages. So, he's a young guy. He was a true sophomore this year. True sophomore, redshirt sophomore, I can't quite remember. Either way, young guy. Just need him to develop a little bit more in the intermediate, develop a little bit more in blitz pickup, all that sort of stuff. And you're going to have one of the better quarterbacks in all of the nation if you develop those things over the course of the offseason. Really good staff there, so I think, Jalen Milroe, probably your quarterback there going forward. And I don't think Alabama's going to be falling off that much. They still got some premium talent on the defensive side of the ball, even with Dallas Turner leaving for the draft. Malachi Nelson came back to the Alabama for this coming year. Caleb Downs was a true freshman this year, and he was one of the most highly touted true freshmen in the Saban era on that side of the ball. So you got some stuff to work with here, and you got a really solid former head coach coming in as the new defensive coordinator. So, I like what Alabama's doing over there. I like what they're doing. It seems like the changes that Saban made when he came in to kind of root out the bullshit, so to speak, within the Alabama program. You're not going to do anything about the fans and whatnot, but within the Alabama program, the changes that Saban made are paying dividends for the next guy in Kalen DeBoer. I have a lot of faith in them still being a premium program. That's kind of that's the standard at Alabama now. Will it be up to Saban's standard? Pretty much no one is going to be, but I think it'll still be a really solid program. Antonio Pierce has emerged as the leading candidate for the Raiders head coaching job. Do the right thing, Mark Davis. That's all I have to say. Do the right thing. The players have, effusively endorsed Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce grew up as a Raiders fan. He embodies the culture historically of the Raiders. He is just a hard-nosed guy that fits that team so well. The players love him. Just do the right thing. Hire Antonio Pierce. He's a leader. He's a culture builder. And as a head coach, that matters way more than basically anything you can provide from an X's and O's standpoint. Whether that be defensively, offensively, establish a culture first and foremost, make the right coordinator hires, and it doesn't matter if you're an offensive, defensive, special teams guy. Look at John Harbaugh over there with the Ravens. He was a special teams guy. He came in, established a culture, and has just made the right hires on both sides of the ball. He's been dynamite on the defensive coordinator hires for his entire career. So you don't need to be the offensive play caller in order to stick around with the team for years to come. That's hire Antonio Pierce, Mark Davis. Do the right thing. After having massive contracts that he is just threw into the shit can over the last couple years between John Gruden and Josh McDaniels, maybe it's time to pinch some pennies on the head coaching contract and just hire the interim going forward. Just a thought. All right. Got one more here. Oh, actually we don't, because I already talked about Evan Stewart committing to Oregon. Cool. So, with that is all of the headlines. Let's talk about the divisional matchups here right quick. Before we talk about that, let me get some coffee. Let me get some coffee real quick. That's already getting cold, so I think I'm just going to gulp this down right quick. Un momento, por favor. Yup. And then I can set that to the side. Okay. Excuse me, that was disgusting, but I needed to clear out the old nasal passages. My bad. Let's just go down the list here. First and foremost, to start off the weekend here in the wild card round, the Browns visited the Texans, and I was right about the overhitting. I was right about my lean to the Texans. Did not think it would be as emphatic as it was. The Texans beat down the Browns. I mean, demolished the Browns 45-14. CJ Stroud looked like a seasoned vet in this game, man. I mean, get this stat line right now. 16 of 21, 274, 13.0 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles, 157.2 passer rating. Was about as perfect as you can possibly be against one of the best defenses in all of the league right now. It also helps that Joe Flacco threw 2 pick sixes in this game in the second half. The Texans, I don't know how far they're going to go in the playoffs, but when you have CJ Stroud tossing the pigskin around the way he can, help Brevin Jordan breaking one off, helping him out a little bit with some yards after the catch. This was a coming out party, to say the least, for CJ Stroud. Unfortunately, next week he will have one of the best quarterbacks in the entire league, the presumptive MVP coming out of the regular season, Lamar Jackson, to go up against on the road. This time here, though, at NRG Stadium in Houston, you saw CJ Stroud at his very best. And this is the reason why Bobby Slowick is a bona fide head coaching candidate this year, because boy, oh boy, was this a clinic of offensive football. I mean, they didn't run the ball particularly well, all things considered. Some of that is kind of, weighed down by Davis Mills having 3 carries for -4 yards, which is basically just him taking knees at the end of the game. CJ Stroud had like a 1-yard run in there. Dameon Pierce, 3 carries for 0 yards, not fantastic. But I mean, the starting running back, Devin Singletary had, not a whole lot of yards, 66 rushing yards, 5.1 yards per carry though, and a touchdown. They did just enough on the ground to free up some space for the Houston passing game, and free them up they did. I mean, Houston, man, I don't know how far they can get in the playoffs. I think they're going to have, the toughest test you can possibly ask for this coming week versus the Ravens, but it is nothing short of impressive what we're seeing from CJ Stroud right now. The way he is able to dissect the defense from start to finish is, as a rookie, better than anyone we've ever seen, really. We didn't see Patrick Mahomes really play in his rookie year. Usually you see rookies struggling all season long. Even the struggles for CJ Stroud at the beginning of the season, he wasn't throwing interceptions. And then by the time he got to the end of the year, he was fully comfortable, just looks completely unfazed no matter what the situation. And he's throwing dimes. Absolute dimes down the field. The ball placement is insane for CJ Stroud. And that's under pressure, with no pressure in his face. By God. Also, by the way, shout out to the Houston pass protection. 0 sacks in this game. And part of that is CJ Stroud having a feel for the pocket, moving up, buying an extra fraction of a second to get the ball off. Also, part of that is having an all-pro left tackle in Laramie Tunsil and solid guys outside of Laramie Tunsil to hold down the fort. Houston, with what they've done, CJ Stroud has just been incredible throughout the course of this thing. The young guys, Nico Collins has been, emerged as a bona fide number 1 receiver. Even without Noah Brown in this game, went out with a shoulder injury and he's on IR. He won't be back for the remaining portion of the playoffs here. Even without him, Nico Collins, Brevin Jordan stepped up. John Mechie had some good catches throughout this one. Houston was just nothing short of impressive. Cleveland on the other side, you didn't think it would happen this emphatically, but you knew this was always a possibility. Joe Flacco, we have enough of a sample size to know who he is. He can look like, the best quarterback in the league at times. He's, tossing balls in there, having a absolute railgun of an arm. A crazy arm, no matter what you say about him. He can make some of the craziest throws you've ever seen. And then he can also make some of the craziest throws you've ever seen on the other side of things in a bad way, not necessarily the good way. And it also doesn't help when your running game is going for 20 carries, 56 yards on the day. That's not going to help you at all. 2.8 yards per carry. He did get a touchdown, but 2.8 yards per carry and 56 yards on the ground is not going to win you a whole lot of games at the NFL level. I'll say that right now. Also, when your defense is getting torched for, hell, you even take out the 2 pick sixes. They gave up 31 points in this game on the defensive side of the ball. You're not going to win a whole lot of games that way. Pretty much, hey, shout out Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He was flying around. 4 tackles for loss in this game. He was about the only one playing well, though. Everyone else, everyone else combined on the team had 1 tackle for loss, and that was Dalvin Tomlinson. Otherwise, Myles Garrett. Hello, Myles Garrett. Are you there? Anyone home? He was completely shut down in this game. That matchup with Laramie Tunsil was firmly won by Laramie Tunsil and the Houston offense. Really, the biggest defensive stars in this game were over on the Houston Texans side. 11 tackles for loss in this game, 4 sacks, and really, if I'm looking at this correctly, there was only one guy on the Houston Texans that had multiple tackles for loss, and it was Christian Harris. Outside of that, it's just a well distributed sort of thing. A bunch of guys with 1 tackle for loss, and that shows that just not one guy was dominating the whole thing. That just shows that the Houston defense was flying around. The Cleveland Browns offensive line, which is, supposedly their strongest unit, which I think absolutely on offense it is their strongest unit, gave up 11 tackles for loss and 4 sacks in this game. Will Anderson had a sack in this game, and by the way, this is something that I feel like isn't talked about enough by the super smart analysts that lean very heavily into the draft value sort of stuff, very much into the value of a trade and whatnot at the time of the trade. I think it's kind of lost that if the guy you pick up, if trading up to that number 3 overall pick and taking Will Anderson after you got C.J. Stroud, the number 2 overall pick, it was criticized at the time for being a bad value trade for the Houston Texans. However, if the guy you take at number 3 is a bona fide star, does it really matter how much you gave up for him? I don't think so. And it's the same thing in a different vein, with Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions taking Jahmyr Gibbs at number 12. Was it lampooned by the I'm trying to get away from just, saying the blanket statement of nerds, but it's the smarter folks, the guys that lean a lot into analytics and whatnot, talking about value of running backs and whatnot. You don't draft a running back in the first round. You can get roughly similar value in later rounds. Well, if that guy you drafted number 12 overall is an absolute stud, does it really matter when you take him? That's the thing here. And again, if you just keep getting good players over and over and over again, you can quibble about quote unquote value at the time. If you just keep hitting on players, it's gonna work out for you in the end. So there's a little give and take there from what I'm talking about here. But I'm getting way ahead of myself. Shout out. Christian Harris had himself a hell of a game, though. Only guy with 2 tackles for loss. Also had a pick 6 in this game. Christian Harris, have yourself a day. Also, Derek Stingley Jr. might be that guy. Absolutely shut down Amari. Well, I don't know about shut down, but 4 for 59. He held him very much in check throughout this one. So, Houston, very, very good team. They're going to be facing a juggernaut next week, unfortunately. So, prepare for pain. Yes, the Cowboys. The Cowboys being the Cowboys, man. There's only one way to describe this. Also, by the way, Jordan Love had like an identical stat line. Not an identical stat line to CJ Stroud in this one. However, the Packers also get the win 48-32 over the Dallas Cowboys on the road, extending the 28-year streak, I believe it is, for the Cowboys not going to the NFC Championship game. They lose another disappointing one at home. Jordan Love was incredible. Like I said, literally identical stat line to what CJ Stroud had. 16 of 21, 272, 13 yards per attempt, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers overall. The difference is he had a bona fide number one at running back behind him. I mean, Aaron Jones, 3 touchdowns in this game, 118 yards on the ground, had another 13-yard catch as well. So over 130 yards of total offense in this game on 22 touches. Aaron Jones was that dude throughout this game. He was incredible. You love to see it. I mean, well, as a Vikings fan, you don't love to see it, but as a Dallas Cowboys fan, I don't think you love to see it either. But man, it's still bullshit that Jordan Love came after Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. They're gonna have, they're gonna have a great starting quarterback for the next. It's gonna be 40 years of great quarterback play. By the time it's all said and done with Jordan Love, it's bullshit. I hate it here, Dad. I fucking hate it here. But that's the way of things right now for the Dallas Cowboys side of things, man. And this is why throughout the course of the season, when other people were just singing the praises of the Dallas Cowboys, how good they are, how unstoppable they are at home, I took the measured approach of looking back historically and saying, I get it. They're a fantastic team. They've done a great job throughout the course of this regular season. Not going to take them seriously until they do it in the playoffs. And lo and behold, they get to the playoffs and they get smoked by the Green Bay Packers. Smoked, I say. Like, don't get fooled by the 32. 16 of that happened in garbage time in the fourth quarter. Like, half of their points were in the fourth quarter. They came into the fourth quarter with a 41-16 deficit. Like, it was not good going into the fourth quarter. It was pretty much over at that point. Had like a little gasp at the end where they, got some touchdowns, tried to get some onside kicks, and it didn't work out. Had a turnover on downs late that basically sealed the deal. I mean, the Dallas Cowboys were never really in this game. From the opening possession, when the Packers went right down the field and scored a touchdown right out of the gates, Dallas Cowboys were not going to win this game. I mean, especially you go into the second quarter. I mean, Green Bay, they just stepped on the gas. I mean, it was 27-0 at one point before the Cowboys scored a touchdown going into halftime. I mean, this was utter domination by the Packers and utter disappointment from the Dallas Cowboys. I do want to talk about the Packers a little bit more here, though, because I'm not saying anything that other people haven't already said, but it is worth noting. You're going to have to probably extend Jordan Love this offseason. That is what it is. I think he's worth every single penny you pay him after what you've seen down the stretch of this year. So you got that going for you. However, literally the entire receiving core is first or second year. Let's just go down the list right now. Romeo Doubs, 151 yards and a touchdown in this game. That's a career high. He's a second-year player. Luke Musgrave got a touchdown in this one, wide open for a 38-yard score that was just beautifully drawn up by Matt LaFleur, beautifully called for by Jordan Love. If the intel is correct, that it was called on the previous play, Jordan Love checked out of it. Then Jordan Love said, let's run that one back. I like what I saw from the defense on that. It goes for 38 yards wide open. One of the most wide open touchdowns we've seen throughout the course of this year. He's a first-year guy. Dontavian Wicks, I believe, is a first-year guy. Tucker Kraft is a first-year guy. Christian Watson is a second-year guy. Bo Melton came out of nowhere. He is, I believe, a first-year guy. Jaden Reed is a first-year guy. And that is all the guys that received targets in this game. Outside of Aaron Jones, are first or second year guys, which means you have at least another year or two before you have to extend any of those guys right now. The Packers may be in the best win now position of any team if they can figure it out on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think Joe Barry should be skating by just because they had a solid performance for 3 quarters against the Dallas Cowboys. And I think you're going to be seeing a lot of that when it comes to the 49ers game. I think you're going to be seeing a little bit of a coming back to earth here for Joe Barry when it's all said and done. But sticking to the positives, as far as the offense is concerned, Hell, with the amount of money you're saving in the receiving core, you can afford to bring Aaron Jones back. I think this is a contract year for him. You can afford to bring Aaron Jones back in a little bit of a premium just because it makes the offense that much better because of all the money you're saving on the outside at this point. It's insane. I mean, you got Jordan Love there. You got a solid running game, got a solid offensive line pretty much perpetually. A really solid receiving core that's all very, very young. We might be seeing here like a 2 to 3 year window before any of these guys have to get paid in the receiving core, where the Packers can just load up and go for championships right now. They are they're the youngest team in NFL history, I believe, to win a playoff game. The first 7 seed since we got to the 7-team model in the playoff per conference to get to the second round, the first one to win, and of course it comes against the Dallas Cowboys. That's just hilarious. But this Packers team they're legit. They're legit right now, and they're ascending. I think next year, them and the Lions are going to be the cream of the crop in that NFC North. I think really, I mean, you look at what the Bears are doing right now. The Vikings, if Kirk Cousins hadn't gone out, I still believe they're either 11-6 or 12-5 this year. I firmly believe that. The Detroit Lions are the Detroit Lions. The Packers are coming up. I mean, the NFC North is starting to look a whole lot like the AFC North here if you get a couple pieces right, especially with Chicago likely drafting Caleb Williams or building an offense more around the skill set of Justin Fields this coming year with how well that defense played down the stretch. I mean, the NFC North, the future of the NFC North is nothing short of bright right now. It is one of the more loaded divisions in the future going forward. That's going to be something to watch. Let's talk a little bit more about the Cowboys, though, because Mike McCarthy, 2 straight years of 12-5, 2 straight years of disappointing finishes in the postseason. Last year it was the boogeyman of all boogeymen for the Dallas Cowboys, the 49ers. This year it was the Green Bay Packers beating them in embarrassing fashion on their own home turf. I wouldn't do it. Just going to preface it by saying that. But when the offense performs terribly like it did, when the defense just got smoked like it did, when special teams they didn't even really play particularly well, when you're doing bad in all 3 phases of the game, generally there is one guy to point at and blame more than anyone else, and that's going to be Mike McCarthy. I would not be shocked if Mike McCarthy was relieved of his duties, maybe even like shortly after I'm done with this podcast. It is not out of the question at all that Jerry Jones decides to pull the trigger there, because he doesn't know how many more of these he has left. He doesn't have time to dilly-dally around with a guy that's going to lose you games in the first round every single year. And again, I would stick with Mike McCarthy because 2 straight years of 12-5, I mean, that just doesn't just happen. Like, it's a fantastic roster that was built by Jerry and Stephen Jones. It's a very good coaching job by Mike McCarthy, and especially with the way he took over the offense this year and performed very well. It's as much on Dak Prescott. I mean, I hate to say it, being a former Mississippi State Bulldog, but it's as much on Dak Prescott as it is on Mike McCarthy. But you're not going to get rid of Dak Prescott, because when you got a top 10 quarterback, you keep the top 10 quarterback. You're not going to go back to the well. That's just not how this thing works. It's not easy to just go back to the draft or free agency for that matter and just find a high-level starting quarterback. You're not going to find a guy that's better than Dak Prescott out there. So you're keeping Dak Prescott. That's not necessarily the case with Mike McCarthy. There's a lot of head coaches out there, former head coaches, really good candidates out there that would be more than happy to walk into this situation if Mike McCarthy were to be relieved of his duties, and I think would do a similar job to Mike McCarthy if they were brought in. So I would not be shocked at all if Mike McCarthy were to lose his job in this upcoming week. It's insane after going a combined 24-10 in 2 regular seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. But I also wouldn't be surprised. We're going to be talking about that in a similar vein here coming up at the end of this thing. But yeah, watch that going forward. I think that's what everyone's watching right now is what did the Dallas Cowboys do with Mike McCarthy going forward. Obviously, you're going to extend Dak, but what do you do with Mike McCarthy going forward here? All right, so that does it for the Saturday games. The Buffalo Steelers game Buffalo-Pittsburgh game, as some may say. Pittsburgh-Buffalo, even, if you're going by away team first on the order there. That got moved to Monday because there was, lake effect snow doing lake effect snow things. Orchard Park was, completely just covered. Just covered in tons and tons of snow on Sunday. The Steelers would not have even been able to fly into the Buffalo airport on Sunday, so game got moved to Monday. We'll leave that for the Monday as is. Did I skip a game in here? Oh, no, I didn't. I didn't. Well, I was about to, but I didn't. Miami, Kansas City. We can just touch on this one briefly. Kansas City did pretty much exactly what I thought they would do in this game. They dominated. They absolutely physically dominated. When you go into a game where it's 27 degrees below zero, it is absolutely freezing. There's gusts of wind out there. It's not something that Miami is used to, and it also lends itself to a style of play that is much more conducive to running the pigskin than it is to passing the ball. And when you're in that type of situation, it's basically coming down to Isaiah Pacheco versus Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, whoever they happen to put out there. And just based on style of play, I'm going to take the psycho that just runs his face into people before I take anyone on the Miami side of things. That's pretty much exactly what happened. Isaiah Pacheco didn't have a fantastic game from a pure rushing perspective, but he's pretty much the reason why they won this game. Patrick Mahomes had about the type of numbers that you would expect given the inclement weather conditions. It was 23 of 41, 262, under 7 yards per attempt. Didn't turn the ball over to his credit, but, only one touchdown. He helped them win the game, especially with his scrambling ability, but didn't exactly put them over the top. Isaiah Pacheco, especially at the end of this game, just running his face into Miami defenders, getting first down after first down, chewing up clock, absolutely put this game away. And the Kansas City Chiefs won 26-7. They dominated this game. Make no mistake about it. And that's as much on the Kansas City defense as it was on Isaiah Pacheco in that offense. You look at the numbers weren't flashy. 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. But you watch this game, the 6 pass defenses are huge, especially since Miami just seemingly refused to acknowledge the elements and just kept on passing the ball. That, the fact that you're down by a bunch of points doesn't exactly help that. But really, they hit one deep shot to Tyreek Hill that accounted for 53 yards, and then in the rest of the in the rest of the plays, 156 yards for Tua Tagovailoa on 38 attempts. Not going to cut it. Just not going to cut it, unfortunately. And a lot of that has to do with that defensive line. Pretty much exactly what I thought would happen, did happen. And Chris Jones, George Karlaftis had a hell of a game as far as rushing the passer, stopping the run, making it difficult out there. L'Jarius Sneed, seemingly in his bag all day with jamming up Tyreek Hill, having a good game. That Chiefs defense is the reason why I would not count out Patrick Mahomes. And I haven't counted out Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs because that defense is so dominant. Now, they're going to be tested once again this upcoming week when they go to the Buffalo Bills, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But starting off with the Miami Dolphins, you saw exactly why the Chiefs are still bona fide contenders in the AFC right now, and why I wouldn't be shocked at all if they got to the AFC Championship game this upcoming year. They're still that team, and offensively, the limitations are what they are. But with the emergence of Rashee Rice, he had 130 yards in this game and a touchdown. With Travis Kelce still being that dude, even with a drop pass, 7 receptions, 71 yards. He played lights out in this game. I think having Rashee Rice in that receiving corner, having Travis Kelce as that tight end, that's just enough. That is just enough in order to get you to the promised land, especially in an AFC that is just so even all around right now. The Chiefs could go all the way, man. They absolutely could go all the way. They've got what they need just by virtue of having Patrick Mahomes with a fantastic defense on the other side. I still maintain the best defense that Patrick Mahomes has had since he's come into the NFL. So, do I think they'll get all the way? No, I think the Ravens will probably clip them at some point if they get to the AFC Championship game, but I'm not counting them out. When you got Patrick Mahomes, I'm simply not going to count you out. That's just a rule of thumb there. As for Miami, I don't think you blow it up. I definitely don't think you blow it up. I don't know what you do with Tua Tagovailoa though, man. I don't, because it's a similar situation to Dak Prescott, but it's more of a discussion because one, you haven't paid Tua yet, so you still have that decision coming up on the horizon this offseason. He's also not on the level of a guy like Dak Prescott, where maybe you could even put Dak Prescott as a fringe top 5 sort of guy this coming year, or this past year. I mean, he led the league in touchdown passes this last year. Tua Tagovailoa is a lot more of a middle of the pack sort of quarterback. Like, he's very accurate. He can put a ball on a dot when you need him to, and when he plays on time, he's one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the entire league, but he's not a very good athlete at the NFL level. Doesn't have a very strong arm by NFL standards. The only real special thing that you see from Tua Tagovailoa is the accuracy, and if you move him off his spot, that accuracy gets spotty. I don't know what Miami would do in trying to replace Tua Tagovailoa, but I wouldn't be shocked if they moved to try to replace Tua Tagovailoa this offseason, because, I mean, you got to change something on the offensive side of the ball. Like, you can give all the shit to the defense you want with Vic Fangio. I mean, when you lose Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, and you lose other guys around that, Xavier Howard banged up throughout the course of this season, this is what's going to happen. You're going to get to a point where you just can't hold up in front of the other team. The problem is the offense, though. I mean, you got all these weapons. You got solid offensive linemen. You got really solid running backs. I mean, Raheem Mostert had 20 touchdowns this year. All that stuff. You got Tyreek Hill on the outside, the fastest wide receiver core ever assembled in NFL history. But at the end of the day, when you get into situations like this in playoff weather, the fact of the matter is, going up against a defense like the Kansas City Chiefs, you got to have a comeback to just getting mushed. Otherwise, you're going to continue to keep getting mushed. And this is what the Dolphins have done all season, basically. And I think you saw a giant leap from Mike McDaniel as a play caller and an offensive guy this year from what it was in year one. I think that's the next step that needs to be taken for Mike McDaniel going forward. I don't know if it's necessarily personnel changes. I think there's a certain degree of personnel changes. I think you need to add some degree of physical capability. Like, physicality needs to be injected into this offense in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, they're going to keep losing like this in high leverage situations. That's just how it is at the NFL level. I think you need to inject some sort of physicality personnel-wise, but in the offense in general, I think that is the next step that Mike McDaniel needs to go to going forward. You got to find a way to win in these sorts of situations. You took a giant step this year going 11-6 with the offense that they got over there. Speed kills, obviously, in a lot of situations. I think you got to keep that aspect because it's what makes the Miami Dolphins so unique on the offensive side of the ball. But when you need to, you just need the physical aspect of being able to just mush a guy's face when it's called for. When it's in this sort of weather, that's what generally wins the game. And Tua's limitations, they are what they are. His job gets a whole lot easier, one, if you invest in the offensive line. I think that's a big personnel way that they can help rectify some of this and have more power runs. Like, running the outside every single time, it helps sometimes, but you know, when the defense is keyed up on it, like the Kansas City Chiefs obviously were in this game, you're not going to be super successful doing that over and over again. At a certain point, you got to mush a guy's face. And I think, like I said, get some offensive line in there, maybe make a few tweaks to the system, the plays that you're calling. They're not far away. They went 11-6 for a reason, and then part of that was beating up on bad teams. But this is kind of the progression of how teams become competitors, in my opinion. I mean, you start off by, winning some games. You get into the playoffs last season, good for you. You win some games you're not supposed to win. That's awesome. This year, you're beating the hell out of the teams you're supposed to beat, but you go up against really solid teams, and it's a different sort of situation, bit of a hit and miss proposition. This coming season is when you need to make the real step up to being a championship contender, in my opinion. You'll get Jalen Phillips back. Bradley Chubb got injured late in the season, so we'll see what his timeline is. But Dolphins aren't that far off. They aren't that far off. I think you're stuck with Tua at this point, I think, unless you draft a guy in the second round or something. You decide to maybe roll the dice on that. Wouldn't recommend it, but unless they do that, they're stuck with Tua Tagovailoa, so they got to work around the limitations that he has. I think adding in a physical, strong running game instead of just putting it all on Tua's shoulders would help out a lot. I think it would definitely help out a lot, and I think Mike McDaniel ultimately does that because this year Mike McDaniel made so many strides as far as staying committed to the run in certain circumstances where in year one he just simply wasn't. I think specifically back to the game against the Green Bay Packers during, I think it was like the end of his first season with the Miami Dolphins, where they were running it right down the Packers' throats. Raheem Mostert had a giant first quarter, and then just inexplicably they went away from the running game. Miami loses that game just because inexplicably they decided to stop running the football. Miami didn't have that problem this year, so you're seeing growth from Mike McDaniel. He becomes more seasoned as a play caller. Again, I think that's the next step up on the ladder, if you will, going forward here. All right, so we are on to the Sunday games. What do we got here on Sunday? So, did I skip over one? I might have. I might have skipped over one, but let's just go to the wild card here, shall we? So that was Packers were on Sunday. I'm stupid. Sorry about that. Went totally out of order. So yep, you're good. Good. That's good. It totally confused a lot of you. Really the only good game of the weekend, and I'm pissed that I fell asleep during the fourth quarter. Rams go on the road to the Lions, and hey, give the Lions a run for their money. But ultimately, the Lions won in a thriller, 24-23. Make no mistake, I may have fallen asleep, but this was a thrilling game from start to finish. And late in the fourth quarter, the Rams had every opportunity to take advantage of this, had every opportunity to take the lead, and they just could not do it. I mean, Matt Stafford had a good game. Puka Nacua went out of his mind, 9 receptions, 181 yards, and a touchdown in this game. Ultimately, it was not enough, though. The Lions get the win. There's tears in the stands. They got their first playoff win since the last time they won the division. They went to the NFC Championship in 1993 and did not go back to the playoffs ever since. And look, the Lions are good enough now to where, as a Vikings fan, I don't like them anymore. I think their fans have gotten annoying, to say the least, and we are right back in to the coveted divisional hate that I love to feel and just has not been there for quite some time. The NFC North is cooking in ways that it has not throughout the course of my life, quite frankly, and you love to see it. So, Lions hate aside, even as an interdivisional foe, I mean, if you don't look at the Lions winning a playoff game and it doesn't warm your heart a little bit, seeing those fans kind of crying tears of joy in the stands, all the the former players, the Calvin Johnsons there, Dan Campbell, a guy who was on the 0-16 team, leading this team, Jared Goff even on the field, the Lions starting quarterback, a guy that the Rams cast aside, going against his former team. There's so many different aspects here that if you look at this and you don't feel like some sort of heartwarming feeling for the Lions after this, even as an interdivisional foe, you don't have a heart. You're not a real sports fan if you aren't, just a little bit emotional watching it, because it is beautiful. It is beautiful to see. And the Lions have gone through so much pain and suffering through all the terrible seasons, all the terrible head coaching hires, the bad front offices, all coming down to hiring Brad Holmes and hiring Dan Campbell. They've earned this, quite frankly. They've earned, through pain and suffering, the Lions fans have earned their ability to celebrate now. Enjoy it while you can. You've got, hell, with the Buccaneers coming up this coming week, they're favored by 6, 7, depends on what book you're going to. They could very easily go to the NFC Championship game. And shout out to the Lions, man, because even with winning this game, and I said throughout the course of the season that defense is going to catch up and bite them in the ass, and ultimately it still may. But with what they were able to do against a really solid Rams offense, and I think I'm going to have to, see if I can pat myself on the back here just to make sure I was right. Hey, here it is right now. I mean, Matthew Stafford played out of his mind. I mean, 367, 10.2 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. No turnovers for that matter either. A lot of that was to Puka Nacua, but I mean, he also got a 38-yard touchdown to Tutu Atwell that was just thrown on a dot as well. So, I mean, Matthew Stafford played well, but ultimately, Rams only scored 23 points, and it comes down to what I was talking about coming into this game. The Lions are a really good team when it comes to stopping the run, and Kyren Williams only 61 yards on the ground, 4.7 yards per carry, which is nice, but only 68 yards total as a team. I mean, the Lions just shut them down on the ground, quite frankly. And you know, to Sean McVay, he obliged them by going away from the running game, leaning more and more into the passing game, instead of doing the bread and butter stuff, sticking to the running game and kind of working the passing game off of that a little bit more. The Lions really shut down the Rams at times in this game, and I'd say a lot of that is Aiden Hutchinson, man. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of elite pass rushers on this team, but Aiden Hutchinson is the one guy, you drafted him right at the top of the draft to do just this, be a one-man pass rush. And that's exactly what he did. He had 2 sacks in this game, 5 QB hits. He was all over Matt Stafford the entire time. Also, by the way, Matt Stafford was concussed, should not have gone back in the game. I mean, anyone with a working set of eyes could see when I think it might have actually been Aiden Hutchinson who drove him through the crust of the earth at one point. Head bangs against the turf. I think anyone with a working set of eyes could see Matthew Stafford's eyes roll into the back of his head and do a little bit of the fencing response on the football field. Thing is, he woke up pretty immediately, went and did the token concussion test, which is basically just like, all right, how important are you to the team? Okay, you're the starting quarterback and we need you to win. How many fingers am I holding up? Okay, 2? Close enough. It's within 3, so you're going back in the game. That's pretty much what I've said this before, and I'm probably not the only one to say it, but how stringent the NFL's concussion testing is solely dependent on how important you are to a team. Like if the number 1 wide receiver goes down, like say Amon-Ra St. Brown were to go down for the Detroit Lions in this game, and he walks off the field, doesn't look completely dazed, but clearly was concussed on the field, he's coming back in the game, no doubt. Jalen Hurts goes out of a game after taking a hit, possibly being concussed, he's coming back in the game. Matthew Stafford, clearly being concussed on the field, he's coming back in the game. But also, if say a guy like Alex Anzalone, not saying he did, but if a guy like Alex Anzalone gets a concussion in the game, he's probably not coming back in just because of there's levels to this thing, man. There's levels to how important you are for the success of a team. Don't need to belabor that one too much. It's just it's hilarious how much the NFL likes to genuflect and kind of just make it seem like they care a lot more than they do about this concussion thing, which it is what it is. It's a whole different discussion for a whole different time. Massive credit to the Detroit Lions, though, and help. Even though the Rams lost in this game, 10-7 is so much better than I thought they would be. I thought you flipped that record around. That was the ceiling for them. I thought 7-10 this year was the absolute ceiling for the offensive Rams. I mean, we talked about it coming into the year. Ernest Jones, who, by the way, 2 sacks in this game, has been one of the best players in that defense all year, and Aaron Donald were the only 2 returning starters for the Los Angeles Rams coming back from the 2022 season. The only 2 starters on defense that returned. And all they did was Raheem Morris came out there and got the most out of him, had a really solid defensive unit the whole season. Puka Nacua steps up in ways that I never even heard of Puka Nacua before he showed up on the Los Angeles Rams. And then all he does is set the rookie record for yards and receptions. You already got Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, which, by the way, I didn't know Tyler Higbee was, he's got a past. He's got a past. And I don't want to bring up old wounds, but, sometimes Twitter is an absolute cesspool. Sometimes it helps you learn some things. And I learned some things about Tyler Higbee this week, but solid sort of option. Kirby Joseph, got a pattern of diving at guys' knees. He tore Tyler Higbee's ACL, but, coming into this game, I mean, he was a really solid option. Kyren Williams coming out of, I don't know about coming out of nowhere, but really kind of coming out of nowhere, being a legitimate lead back, the best back that Sean McVay has had since Todd Gurley in all likelihood. The offensive line playing really well. That was really the only part of the team where you're like, okay, for once the offensive line seems like a strength on this Los Angeles Rams, which is not something you'd said for years in the past. I mean, this was just a really, really solid team throughout the course of the year in a year that was not expected. So credit to the Rams where it is due. You performed a lot better than expected, and the coming seasons are looking bright for you as long as you've got Sean McVay in the fold. You got Matthew Stafford for at least one more year. We'll see what the succession plan is after Matthew Stafford. I think now would probably, in a really deep quarterback draft, now would probably be a good time to draft a quarterback and groom him as the heir apparent, because I don't think you don't have the quarterback of the future on the roster right now. It's not Stetson Bennett, otherwise he would have been starting throughout the course of this year instead of signing Carson Wentz off the street and bringing him in to the starting lineup for that final game of the season. You need a real heir apparent to line up behind Matthew Stafford at this point. But hey, Los Angeles Rams, Les Snead, he was cooking, man. He has been cooking on those mid-round draft picks. But yeah, credit to the Detroit Lions, getting a playoff win for the first time since 1993. Good for y'all. Good for y'all. And that was it for Sunday. Monday, we had a couple of snoozers. Buffalo beat the piss out of Pittsburgh. There was snow in the stands, snowballs being thrown on the field, refs doing some ref stuff in the game, not calling stuff on Buffalo. I don't know. I think it's a loser's argument to blame the refs for if you lose, unless it's like one of those situations where in a pivotal moment, like Brad Allen decides to get confused on which guy is eligible for you on the 2-point conversion. Shout out the Detroit Lions. Yeah, I think unless you're doing that, it's kind of a loser response to blame the refs when it's all said and done. Pittsburgh, man. They just got bodied. They just got absolutely bodied. They ran up against a much better team. James Cook, I mean, really the entire running game. Josh Allen broke off a 52-yard run, which I believe is a record for quarterbacks in the postseason. 52-yard touchdown run where he faked a slide. Is it cheesy? Is it a little bit what's the word I'm looking for here? Is it a little bit cheap? Yes, because if you go for a slide, the defense automatically lets up, and Josh Allen decided to maybe go for a slide, and then decide nope, I'm going to keep it running, and goes all the way for a 52-yard touchdown. That's kind of cheap. It is what it is there, but still 74 yards on the ground for him, 79 for James Cook. Ultimately, as a team, they go for 179, 5.3 yards per carry, and a touchdown in the game. And that's in addition to Josh Allen completing 70% of his balls for 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 0 turnovers in general, which if Josh Allen is playing turnover-free football, you have no chance in hell of winning that game if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Your only avenue to victory here was to turn Josh Allen over and make it a game that way, and that simply did not happen. And then conversely, Mason Rudolph threw 1 interception, multiple interceptable balls. George Pickens lost a fumble in this game, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, really, they don't have a quarterback right now. And if they did, they would be on the field. If Kenny Pickett was the quarterback, he would be on the field right now. And then in addition to that, in the post-game presser, reporters are asking Mike Tomlin about 1 year left in his contract, and he just walked off the podium. We're going to have to see on that one. It could be another thing where, hey, Pittsburgh Steelers might be moving in a different direction. I don't think it'll be the Pittsburgh Steelers' decision. Probably ultimately comes down to whether Mike Tomlin wants to take a year off from coaching or not. It's been a taxing time to be the coach there over the course of the season with all that has gone on. I think he probably comes back next year. I don't really see him going, but would I be surprised if he went after the way this season has ended? No, I would not. No, I would not be surprised at all. It all kind of comes down to, well, first off, the personnel department has to start making some real moves on the defensive side of the ball outside of T.J. Watt. I mean, Joey Porter Jr. was a good pickup this past offseason. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick there. You really have to fill out the linebacking core. That was a giant glaring hole this year. Probably continue to fill out the secondary. And then in addition to that, get the offensive line where it needs to be and hire a damn offensive coordinator that is worth a damn, quite frankly. And the quarterback situation is what it is. They have enough talent around the quarterback right now to where even with just average quarterback play, you should be able to put together a solid offense. I mean, when you got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, that's a good 1-2-3 as far as receiving options. You got a solid 1-2 punch in Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. You think you picked up a really, really solid blocking tight end in Darnell Washington in the draft this past year. Really, really solid guy to have in the running game. You bring in the right offensive coordinator, and I think the Steelers are possibly an 11-win football team next year. I think they're going to be right back in the thick of it, especially if they have Mike Tomlin and they continue to fill out the defense. I think they're not that far off. But man, it feels like the Steelers have been in this purgatory now for several years, like where they're just good enough to make the playoffs, just good enough to get you a draft pick in the 20s year after year, but they're not good enough to get over the top. And I think a lot of Steelers fans are tired of it. I would caution those Steelers fans that the grass is not always greener. You don't always go from Chuck Noll to oh God, I can't believe I'm forgetting the guy's name. Oh man, I don't know what I don't. Bill Cowher, my goodness. Bill Cowher. I don't know how I was forgetting Bill Cowher's name. You don't always go from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin. The grass is not always greener on the other side. So I would hesitate before you run Mike Tomlin out of town. It feels like this is a possible inflection point right now. There's a lot hinging on the offensive coordinator hire coming in this upcoming offseason. I don't think you have the full-time offensive coordinator on the team right now. I think you need to bring in a guy that has a little bit more innovation in his game than what you saw from Matt Canada and everything that was happening down the stretch. You got to do something with the quarterback position. I don't know what the hell you do with the quarterback position at this point. I don't know if Kenny Pickett is the answer. I know Mason Rudolph certainly isn't the answer going forward, but you got to do something there. Steelers are in a bad way right now. Not a terrible way. Like I said, they're still probably good enough to maybe get 10 or 11 wins next season, but they got some things to figure out. To say the least. On the Bills side of things, I do think that I think they have the offensive coordinator of the future, right? I mean, you fire Ken Dorsey, and sure, Stephon Diggs has been kind of a no-show down the stretch of this year. But with Stephon Diggs kind of taking a step back, the offense is taking a step forward. Make no mistake about it. I think Joe Brady has, augmented, really tailored the run game to the strengths of the personnel. A lot more power run with James Cook, very much a straight line runner, very fast in a straight line, very physical runner, a lot like his brother in that way. Very, very solid runner is James Cook. Just got to, put him in the right situation. I don't think Ken Dorsey was putting him in the right situations to succeed. Joe Brady is, so the running game has gotten much, much better under Joe Brady. The passing game, as long as you got Josh Allen, there's only so far that you can fall passing game-wise. I think Joe Brady should be hired as the full-time offensive coordinator after this year. I think he's done a hell of a job there with the Buffalo Bills this season. Sean McDermott, powered by Al-Qaeda themselves, has just done a hell of a job down the stretch of this year. It's just been, all over social media. I've just seen the classic video of, I don't know what country it's in, what Middle Eastern nation, where it's just a bunch of guys firing AK-47s in the air. That's, the Bills locker room after this win. All sorts of memes like that, and just I'm all here for it. It is objectively funny to use the terrorist on 9/11 as your motivational tactic. People keep saying though that happened this season, guys. That was 2019. That was stop spreading misinformation. That was 2019 when Sean McDermott made maybe the worst motivational speech of all time. That wasn't this year. It just came out this year in that hit piece by whoever wrote that. But yeah, the Buffalo Bills are in a good spot right now. I've said it before. They're the hottest team in the AFC right now, outside of maybe the Baltimore Ravens, and they're going up against the Kansas City Chiefs this week in what is sure to be a dandy, a clashing of play styles to say the least. And usually in this matchup, you think of Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, going to be high-flying offenses. I think this comes down to, does the Kansas City Chiefs defense dominate like they did this past week? And if they do, it comes down to the physicality of that running game. And by the way, you're not going up against a team like the Miami Dolphins that doesn't have a power running game. You saw it in this game. in football weather, to say the least, there in Buffalo, James Cook and the boys were running some power football. You're not going to be getting that same sort of rushing attack that you got with the Miami Dolphins. I think that Bills Chiefs game, for different reasons, is going to it's a dandy of a matchup, an absolute dandy of a matchup. I can't wait for it. But one thing at a time here. Buffalo Bills move on to the divisional round, and one more game. We've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers just eviscerated the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, embarrassed them in ways that are just indicative of everything that has gone wrong down the stretch of this year. I mean, 32-9, the final score in that game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers beating the hell out of the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, the Eagles' defense has been embarrassing down the stretch of this year. Really, it's seemingly only gotten worse since Sean Desai was relieved of his play calling duties and ultimately probably relieved of his defensive coordinator duties. Matt Patricia has not been, I mean, honestly, has been worse than Sean Desai. And it really, the play calling hasn't, I mean, to a certain extent, guys are running wide open in the secondary. There were Tampa Bay receivers running free all day long pretty much and getting burned on the outside. You saw Darius Slay go down with a back injury in this one. That's a tough one. I hope he's okay. Luckily, he's got a whole offseason to recover, but back injuries are tricky. Hopefully, he's all right going into the next season. But really, just from a scheme perspective, like I said, guys running wide open, and even outside of the scheme, tackling-wise, I mean, there were multiple long touchdowns in this game by Tampa Bay that should have been stopped short, but the tackling was so atrocious. I mean, USC levels of bad tackling in this game where guys were just like, patty caking around, two-hand touching guys, and the receivers were just off to the races for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It was embarrassing. It was absolutely embarrassing. Your Hall of Fame center, Jason Kelce, announced his retirement shortly after the game, too. So that offensive line that has been the staple of this window for the Philadelphia Eagles is kind of falling apart at the seams at this point. You're coming off a game against Baker Mayfield where 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 9.4 yards per attempt, over 300 yards passing. I mean, looking better than, probably a career game for Baker Mayfield, quite frankly. Maybe the best game of his entire career. It's an embarrassing performance to end off what ultimately was a head-scratching down the stretch for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts looked terrible in this game. The offense looked bad. The defense looked even worse. What happened to the Philadelphia Eagles, man? It's because it's not like the personnel just changed overnight. It's not like some major injury happened and then all of a sudden this Eagles team was just awful. It just feels like there's discord in the locker room. There's something going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to right now that contributed to that 1-5 just meltdown down the stretch where the only team they beat was the Tommy DeVito-led New York Giants. Excuse me. And then when they go back and play the New York Giants, it's Tyrod Taylor playing, who's actually a solid backup quarterback, and they get absolutely waxed at the end of the season. This is a weird situation for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think I said it coming in. I would not fire Nick Sirianni right now unless there is some serious culture problems permeating from Nick Sirianni that are behind the scenes that we don't see, which seems like may be the case. Unless it's something like that, I wouldn't fire Nick Sirianni. But if you were to fire Nick Sirianni, being embarrassed on a playoff stage by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would kind of precipitate that. So the Dallas Cowboys, the Philadelphia Eagles, 2 teams in the same division that have been very, very good over the last 2 years. Those are going to be head coaching situations to watch because I would not be shocked at all if Nick Sirianni gets fired. In fact, I would lean towards him actually being fired right now. I wouldn't do it. I'd give him a chance to run it back, totally clean slate with the coordinators. You can't have either of them back, quite frankly. The most obvious thing here is you can't have Brian Johnson back as offensive coordinator, and you have to completely clear the deck on the defensive side. I don't think anything that has been done this year can return in coming years on the defensive side of the ball. Matt Patricia, Sean Desai, the entire coaching staff, see ya, get out of here. It's not tenable. You can't have them back. Head coaching wise, with how embarrassing this final stretch was, with how embarrassing that final game was, boy, it's going to be a tough sell to keep Nick Sirianni around. I know the fans already want him gone, quite frankly. That's kind of been obvious down the stretch of this year that they're fed up with what Nick Sirianni is doing with the Philadelphia Eagles. But after this final performance, I am inclined to think that Howie Roseman and Jeff Lurie are going to be looking in different directions, especially with all of the options out there for head coaching candidates right now. Hell, Ben Johnson wouldn't be a terrible landing spot for him if they decide to go in that direction when it's all said and done. I don't know if Nick Sirianni is long for this world as far as a head coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. That's going to be one to monitor going forward because that's an absolute mess of a situation right there brewing in Philadelphia. Outside of that, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, man, what a performance, man. And Todd Bowles, by the way, I thought, lest we forget, go back to all the way back to my early prediction segment back in like May of last year. I thought the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to be the number one overall pick. I didn't, and it wasn't just because their roster was bad. Hell, I didn't think the roster was really that bad. It's just a combination of the fact that you got Baker Mayfield at quarterback, or Kyle Trask, because it wasn't really, I mean, especially with how the summer went and how embarrassing some of those videos were coming out as far as accuracy of Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask in those, those 7-on-7 workouts, the individual drills and all that sort of stuff. I thought for sure that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were going to be one of the worst teams in the entire league. And they weren't necessarily like lighting teams on fire, but you go 9-8, which is better than I thought you would be, quite frankly. You win a playoff game. You're in the second round. Todd Bowles deserves a lot of credit for how well this team played this year. I think he has improved from what he showed with the New York Jets. Still makes some interesting coaching decisions. So he went for it on 4th and 3 one time last night. Very next set of downs is 4th and 3, decides to kick the field goal. Sometimes he does have, decisions like that where it's like, okay, a little consistency would be cool. But ultimately, he has done such a good job with this team. I think the players really like him, really appreciate him. I think they found something with Baker Mayfield. And I was not a believer for the first part of this season, but as the season has gone on, Dave Canales deserves a lot of credit, the offensive coordinator there for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with what he's done with Baker Mayfield. I think they found something at the quarterback position where a little bit of a cost-controlled contract. I think Baker Mayfield's going to sign for more money than he's making this year because he's not really making a whole lot of money by quarterback standards this year. But 20-some million, maybe, if he's around 30 million, maybe. Just a solid, like, mid-level starting quarterback money. I think, you got something there at quarterback. Todd Bowles is showing you something there at the head coach. Obviously can game plan a defense out of a paper bag, quite frankly. He's one of the better defensive coordinators in all of football right now. Got to be impressed with what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done this season. And that dumpster fire of a division right now. Who knows what the Atlanta Falcons are going to do? They probably have the best roster in the division. The Saints are in perpetual cap hell. I don't really take them seriously as a contender going forward here. The Buccaneers are in a position where, in a weak division, they make some changes here and there. They get better in places. They could run this division for a couple of years now. By the way, it's worth mentioning, Kalijah Kancey is as advertised coming in, man. He was, getting those Aaron Donald comparisons coming into the league. And he's not really necessarily that physical presence that Aaron Donald is, but he flies around on the field. He is a tackling machine for tackles for loss anyways. He's disruptive, all that sort of stuff. He always seems to find his way around the ball and around the quarterback when it's all said and done. I really like the Kalijah Kancey pickup there in the draft, and I think it's going to pay dividends for them going forward, especially as their core on the front seven continues to age. I like what the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are building right now, man. If they can, rectify the offensive line a little bit. Obviously, you got Tristan Wirfs on the outside. That's a good piece to build off of. If you kind of, rectify the interior a little bit more, build some degree of running game because they really don't have a whole lot. Don't be fooled by the overall numbers in this game. Rachaad White needs some help there on the offensive line. It's a very good pass-catching running back, but as far as a pure runner, needs some help on that offensive line. But again, if you make a tweak here and there, I think they could run the division for a couple years now, for a couple years going forward. And that's not something I would have said coming into this season. It's a credit to everyone involved, from Baker Mayfield to the Dave Canales to Todd Bowles, all the assistant coaches, the players, Hall of Famer going forward in Mike Evans. Everyone deserves credit there. However, you are now going on the road to the Detroit Lions, who just got the monkey off their back, so to speak, by beating their former quarterback, Matt Stafford. We'll see how that goes. I have a feeling it's going to go in the direction of the Detroit Lions, but we'll see. So yeah, I'll just go through real quick as to what the divisional round matchups are, and then we'll get out of here because your boy is about to. I mean, I got to go to the bathroom so bad right now, so we'll just hit this real quick. So it's Texans Ravens on the Saturday 4:30 slot. Right now it's 9.5 in a lot of places, or 9. Over under is 44.5 or 44. You can actually get a 45 at BetMGM if you're really adamant about that under at the moment. You can get 45 in a lot of places actually. So yeah, just shop around on that one. Packers are going to the 49ers. 49ers favored by either 9.5 or 10, depending on the sports book you go to, which I feel like actually makes sense as far as the line is concerned. The 49ers are just that good. Over under is 49.5 or 50. We'll see. 50.5 actually at BetMGM once again if you're looking to bet the under there. Buccaneers at the Lions. It is -6 in most places. DraftKings actually has a -7 for whatever reason, but it's 6 in most places in favor of the Lions. And over under is at either 47 at DraftKings, 48.5 everywhere else pretty much. So, do some shopping around there. Rivers is actually at 49 if you're really looking to bet the under at the moment. And then you got Chiefs Bills. 2.5 in most places. You can get a 3 over at, let me see the sports book there. It looks like MGM is the only one offering a 3 at this point. Very favorable lines at MGM right now for whatever reason. So you got that, and 46.5 on the over-under in actually really just FanDuel and DraftKings, 46 everywhere else pretty much. So yeah, there you go. There's your lines. There are your matchups. We'll get more of a full in-depth preview here on the Thursday episode, but just wanted to put that out there for you right now. With that said, though, thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. You can, subscribe wherever you're getting this, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Follow me on Twitter at Caleb Verzak. Link will be in the description. Same thing with the email, unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com. Either DM me or shoot me an email if you're trying to contact the show, and then we'll just go on from there. So yeah, thanks so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. As always, I've got no clue what I'm talking about. And I'll be honest, folks, I didn't get a fun fact for this week, so hopefully I have one on Thursday. I apologize. Either way, though, y'all have a good one. I got to go to the bathroom. Peace out, Girl and or Boy Scouts, or they, them Scouts, whatever you happen to be. Peace out.